You picked up your phone to check one thing, one notification, one quick look, and then 45 minutes disappeared. Maybe an hour, maybe more. When you finally put it down, there's a specific feeling that arrives. Not refreshed, not informed, just slightly emptier than before, slightly more behind, slightly less capable of doing the thing you were supposed to be doing. You've probably written this off as a bad habit, a discipline problem, something you'll fix when things slow down. But the real answer is far stranger than that. What's happening to you in those lost minutes isn't weakness. It isn't distraction. It is the deliberate, precisely engineered dismantling of the exact mental systems you need to build a better life. And it's being done to you by some of the most sophisticated technology ever created. It runs on the deepest knowledge of human behavior ever assembled. It is updated by artificial intelligence every single time you swipe. This isn't a story about bad habits. This is a story about a trap, built by some of the most intelligent, well-funded engineers and behavior scientists on the planet. A trap designed to look like entertainment. A trap that is quietly, systematically rewiring your brain for failure while you watch videos of other people succeeding. And the cruelest part? The trap doesn't just steal your time. It steals the specific mental and biological resources you need to escape it. It takes your motivation. It takes your attention. It takes your ability to tolerate discomfort long enough to do hard things. And then it serves you content that makes you feel like the problem is you, like you just need to try harder, like the people succeeding around you have something you don't. They don't. But your phone has been very carefully trained to make you believe they do. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. To understand what your phone is doing to your brain, you need to understand something about the brain itself, something that was true long before smartphones existed. Deep inside your brain, there is a system. Researchers call it your brain's reward and motivation engine, and the chemical it runs on is almost certainly not what you think it is. Most people have heard that dopamine is the feel-good chemical, the pleasure signal, the thing your brain releases when something nice happens. But that's only half the story. And the half that's missing explains almost everything about why your phone is winning the war against your potential. So, what's the real story? Researchers studying this reward chemical found something more specific and more important than the pleasure story. It doesn't fire most powerfully when you get a reward. It fires most powerfully in anticipation of a reward. In the moment before you know whether something good is going to happen. In the uncertainty between wanting and receiving. This chemical is not a celebration signal. It is a hunting signal. It evolved to make you search, to make you keep going, to make you push towards something that might be just around the next corner. Does that sound familiar? This is why gambling is so addictive. Not because winning feels incredible, although it does, but because not knowing whether you're about to win is a state your brain finds nearly impossible to leave. The uncertainty is the drug. The not quite knowing is what keeps you pulling the lever. Now think about what happens every time you pull down on your phone's feed to refresh it, every time you swipe up to the next video, every time you open an app to see if something new is waiting. You are pulling a lever on a slot machine, every single time. And the people who built that slot machine have spent billions of dollars making sure it never quite satisfies you enough to put it down. Billions. That's not a guess. That's the budget. A 2025 study confirmed what behavior scientists had long suspected. The unpredictability of social media content directly activates your brain's reward system in a way that is genuinely difficult to stop voluntarily. The key word there is voluntarily. This is not about willpower. This is about a biological system being deliberately triggered by a design feature that was built to trigger it. The pull-to-refresh mechanic, the infinite scroll, the autoplay, the notification. These are not neutral product decisions. Research has documented them as design tricks that exploit psychological weak points to keep you on the platform longer. Asa Raskin helped create the infinite scroll mechanic. He later spoke publicly about building it without fully thinking through its consequences. He estimated it causes roughly 2,000 additional hours of scrolling per day, globally, from one feature. He described it as accidentally exploiting a psychological weak point the human brain simply didn't evolve to defend against. One feature, one designer, 2,000 hours a day, every day. By removing the natural endpoint of a feed, the bottom of a page, the last article, Infinite Scroll removes something specific. Researchers call them decision points. A decision point is a moment of natural pause, the end of a chapter, the credits rolling. These are the moments when your brain gets a window to step back and ask, do I want to keep going? These pauses are when the thinking part of your brain, the part responsible for rational decisions, long-term planning, and impulse control, gets a chance to weigh in. Infinite Scroll eliminates those moments entirely. It replaces them with a single, continuous flow designed to carry you forward without ever creating the natural interruption that lets your more deliberate brain catch up. You scroll because you're already scrolling. There's never a moment where you stopped and decided to keep going. You just never stopped. And this is happening billions of times a day, to billions of people. A 2025 publication flagged social media scrolling as a public health concern. Platforms use smart systems and design tricks that play on basic human psychology to keep you engaged. Pull to refresh, autoplay, social reactions, infinite scroll. The science behind it involves small hits of that reward signal released with each scroll, combined with unpredictable rewards. Over time, this creates something researchers compare to tolerance, the same thing that happens with addiction. Worth sitting with. Tolerance means that over time, the same thing produces less response. The first cup of coffee wakes you up powerfully. After years of daily coffee, you need 3 cups to get the same effect. The brain adjusts, it recalibrates, it turns down its sensitivity to a signal that keeps arriving at the same intensity, because the brain is always optimizing for efficiency and novelty. Always. The same thing happens with your brain's reward system when you scroll. Continuous, rapid-fire reward hits. Every new piece of content, every like, every comment, cause your brain to turn down the dial. It reduces its sensitivity to the reward signal. It treats the constant hits as the new normal rather than something worth getting excited about. And here's where your real life pays the price. After sustained heavy scrolling, the things that used to feel genuinely rewarding start to feel flat, dull. Finishing a project, having a real conversation, working toward a goal and seeing progress. All flat. You haven't changed your values, you haven't lost your ambition. Your reward system has been recalibrated by an artificial environment pumping it full of stimulation at a rate your brain has never seen before in human history. And now the slow, steady, real rewards of building an actual life can't compete. Not because you're broken, because the comparison isn't fair. Your brain is running on a system that's been deliberately overloaded. A specific type of brain scan, one that measures how much of that reward signal a brain can actually produce and use, found something that should genuinely alarm anyone who spends significant time on social media. People who spent a greater share of their phone time on social apps had measurably lower capacity to produce and use the reward signal in a region of the brain linked to forming habits and learning from rewards. Crucially, it wasn't total screen time that predicted this difference. It was specifically the kind of apps being used. Social, algorithmic, reward loop platforms. Not all screen time is equal, not even close. And this is where the trap starts to close around something much bigger than scrolling. Because your brain's reward system isn't just about feeling good, it is the biological foundation of motivation itself. Research has established clearly that this reward signal plays a central role in how you pursue goals, how you push through difficulty, how strongly you feel pulled toward the work of building something over time. When the reward system is worn down or dulled, motivation doesn't just get lower. It gets specifically worse at the tasks that demand the most from it. The long-term ones. The ones that don't pay off until months or years of consistent effort have gone in. Building financial security, building physical health, developing a skill, a career, a business, a relationship, all long-term tasks. These are precisely the things that a worn-down, dulled reward system struggles most to sustain. And they're also precisely the things your phone's algorithm has no interest in helping you do. None whatsoever. Those things happen offline, away from the platform, without generating any engagement data. The algorithm gains nothing from your personal growth. It gains everything from your continued presence in the feed. Everything. Now let's talk about the second layer of the trap, because infinite scrolling and a worn-down reward system are only half the story. The other half is what the algorithm is actually choosing to show you while you scroll. This is the part that most people never think about at all, even though it is quietly shaping their beliefs, their worldview, their sense of what's possible for them, and through all of that, their financial path. Every major social media platform runs on a recommendation system, a set of rules a computer follows to decide which piece of content do I show this person next. It makes that decision using an enormous amount of data about you specifically, what you've watched, how long you watched it, what you paused on, what you scrolled past quickly, what you clicked, what you lingered near without clicking. Every signal your scrolling produces is fed into a system building a model of you, a model designed to predict, with increasing accuracy, what will keep you on the platform the longest. Note what it is optimizing for. Not your well-being, not your growth, not accuracy, engagement time. That is the only metric that matters to the algorithm. How long do you stay? And what has the algorithm learned, across billions of users and trillions of data points, about what keeps people engaged the longest? The answer has been consistent across the research, and it is uncomfortable. Content that triggers outrage, fear, anxiety, and comparison to others drives more engagement than content that is calm, accurate, or encouraging. Every time. Negative news holds attention longer than positive news. Divisive content generates more interaction than unifying content. Sensationalized, black and white stories outperform complex, accurate, many-sided ones. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a mathematical outcome. The algorithm didn't decide negative content is more valuable for any philosophical reason. It discovered, through cold arithmetic, that negative content keeps people on the platform longer, and it optimized accordingly. Every major platform system has been shaped, intentionally or not, toward a content world weighted toward emotional provocation, toward anxiety, toward outrage, and toward a very specific mental state those emotions produce in the people experiencing them. What mental state? Researchers have a name for it. It's the state your brain enters when it perceives a continuous stream of threats, a state of heightened alertness, elevated stress hormones, and narrowed focus onto sources of danger. It's a state that evolved for genuine survival situations, the kind where staying intensely alert to potential danger was a matter of life and death. It is not a state suited for long-term planning, creative thinking, or building anything. In this state of constant high alert, your brain's attention is directed outward and backward, toward threats, toward problems, toward what's wrong, not inward and forward, not toward goals, not toward what could be built. Every hour you spend in an algorithmically generated content environment optimized for emotional engagement is an hour your brain spends in a state that is the neurological opposite of what personal growth and financial progress require. And it gets more specific, because the algorithm isn't just showing you emotionally activating content in general. It's showing you content tailored specifically to your existing beliefs, your existing fears, and your existing patterns of engagement. This is the echo chamber, a personalized content environment where the algorithm has learned what you already believe, what already makes you anxious, what already grabs your attention, and then floods you with more of exactly that. A major review published in 2025 looked at a decade of research on filter bubbles and echo chambers. It found consistent evidence that these algorithmic systems reinforce existing views and cut off exposure to different perspectives, structurally, by design. What that means in plain language: the algorithm learns your existing view of the world and then builds a content environment that confirms and reinforces it continuously. Alternative perspectives don't disappear, they just stop reaching you. This is a feature, not a bug. Challenging established beliefs requires more mental effort than accepting information that confirms what you already think. And social media platforms are in the business of making everything as easy and frictionless as possible. Because friction reduces engagement, so the algorithm removes the friction of encountering ideas that challenge you. It smooths the path toward a content environment that feels comfortable, that validates what you already know. What does this mean for personal growth? Real growth requires encountering ideas that challenge your current picture of the world. It requires exposure to genuinely different perspectives. It requires the productive discomfort of having your assumptions questioned. These are not optional features of growth. They are the mechanism of growth. You cannot genuinely change your thinking without being exposed to thoughts that are different from the ones you already have. You cannot expand your understanding of what's possible for you without seeing genuinely new possibilities. You cannot identify the blind spots in your current worldview without something outside that worldview showing them to you. The algorithm, left to its own optimization, systematically removes all of this from your daily experience, not maliciously, mathematically, because exposing you to challenging content produces lower engagement than showing you more of what already activates your familiar responses. So you are left in a world that feels increasingly like a mirror, a curated reflection of what you already think, already fear, already believe. And the mirror feels comforting, in the way that all confirmation feels comforting. But a mirror can't show you anything you haven't already seen, and a mind that only encounters reflections of itself cannot grow. That's not a metaphor. That's the mechanism. Now let's go somewhere that most conversations about social media never reach. Let's talk about what this is doing to your financial life specifically, because the connection between your scrolling behavior and your bank account is real, and it operates through mechanisms that are almost never discussed. So let's start with the first one. The worn-down reward system and its effect on financial discipline. Financial discipline, the ability to delay gratification, to choose a future reward over a present one, to stick with a savings plan through months of unremarkable progress, runs almost entirely on your brain's reward system. When that system is running at reduced capacity, financial discipline becomes neurologically harder, not just psychologically harder, biologically harder. The reward machinery that would normally make consistent saving feel rewarding is running at lower power. Why? Because that same machinery has been overloaded by the platform's design. The very engine you need to stay financially disciplined has been worn down by the same system that's also emptying your time, both at once. There is also a more direct mechanism researchers have documented, a state called learned helplessness. Originally identified in animal research, it's been well established in human studies ever since. It's the trap within the trap. Learned helplessness is what happens when a person is repeatedly exposed to negative outcomes they cannot control or escape. Over time, the brain encodes a specific belief. My actions don't affect outcomes. Effort doesn't produce results. Trying doesn't help. And once that belief is encoded, people stop trying, even in situations where their actions absolutely could make a difference. This is not a theory. This is a well-documented pattern in human behavior research. Research on doom scrolling has identified a specific path to learned helplessness through algorithmic content. When people are continuously exposed to distressing information they cannot influence or escape, the brain gradually forms a specific loop. See threat, feel powerless, see threat, feel powerless. The brain learns, threats exist everywhere, and there is nothing I can do about them. This repeated exposure erodes motivation, agency, and the belief that you can change your situation. In financial terms, this is devastating. The belief that your actions don't produce meaningful outcomes is the single most powerful predictor of financial inaction. Why invest if the markets are rigged? Why save if everything is unstable? Why start a business if the economy is collapsing? Why develop skills if the job market is broken? These questions feel like rational responses to a difficult world. But they're also the exact questions that learned helplessness makes you more likely to ask, and more likely to answer with inaction. The algorithm isn't making your financial situation harder directly. It's making your psychological relationship with effort, agency, and the future worse, and that's where the real damage compounds. A person who has lost confidence in the link between their efforts and their outcomes will not do the things that build financial security, not because they're unintelligent, not because they don't care, but because a specific mechanism has quietly eroded the foundation. There is also a third financial mechanism that deserves serious attention. It is the one that directly connects your screen to your spending, and it is the most visible, the most immediate, and the most deliberately engineered. Social comparison. Your brain did not evolve to compare itself against millions of people simultaneously. It evolved for a world where your social reference group was the 30 or 50 people in your immediate community. Your sense of where you stood, financially, socially, in terms of status and resources, was calibrated against a small, real, local group of people whose actual circumstances you broadly understood. That was the design. That is not what you have now. That comparison group has been replaced. Not entirely in real life, but powerfully and continuously in the digital environment where most people now spend hours every day. Your reference group on social media is not your actual community. It is a curated, algorithmically selected, best moments only presentation from millions of people across the world, filtered further toward content featuring lifestyles and possessions that feel just far enough above your own to generate aspiration and inadequacy simultaneously. This comparison is not neutral. Research on social identity and financial behavior has established that people make financial decisions partly to maintain consistency with their sense of where they stand relative to others. Partly, but powerfully. When your digital environment is continuously presenting a reference group whose apparent wealth and lifestyle are curated to be aspirational, your brain's social status system responds. It generates pressure to keep up, pressure to signal, pressure to acquire. This pressure doesn't arrive as a conscious decision. It arrives as a feeling, the feeling that you need something, that something is missing, that your current situation is inadequate in a specific way that the right purchase might address. It arrives as the buy now impulse, the midnight online shopping session, the justification of a purchase you didn't plan because you've been marinating in imagery of a lifestyle that made your current one feel insufficient. Research has documented that the psychological pressure to appear financially comparable to your perceived peer group leads to increased borrowing and a higher likelihood of financial difficulty. The digital environment has turbocharged this mechanism enormously. It expanded the reference group from dozens of people you actually know to millions of people you will never meet, presenting their financial lives in the most aspirational possible light, serving it to you continuously throughout your day. The practical financial cost of this is real and compounding. Spending driven by comparison anxiety rather than genuine need is spending that doesn't produce satisfaction, because satisfaction in this domain is impossible to reach. Why? Because the reference group is algorithmically calibrated to always be slightly above you. There is always a more impressive renovation, a better holiday, a nicer car, a more successful-looking version of someone your age. Always. The algorithm knows that comparison content generates engagement. It will never run out of it. It will never show you enough to feel caught up. Because feeling caught up reduces the anxiety that drives the engagement. So you spend. Not because you needed the thing, because the platform created a reference group calibrated to make you feel like you were missing it. And the spending produces temporary relief. Before the feed cycles back to the next comparison. This is not a character flaw. This is a well-engineered system producing a well-documented psychological outcome. But the effect on your bank account is identical regardless. The money still leaves. Now let's go even deeper. Because there is something happening to your brain under sustained scrolling that goes beyond the reward system and beyond financial behavior. Something that affects the very architecture of thinking itself. And this is the piece that most genuinely alarmed researchers who studied it. A major review published in 2025 examined 71 studies involving nearly 1,000 participants. It found that short-form video use was associated with measurably poorer thinking overall. The strongest effects were on two specific abilities. First, the ability to focus on a single thing for a sustained period. Second, the ability to resist impulses and override automatic responses with deliberate ones. Both measurably degraded. These two abilities are not optional extras in a well-functioning mind. They are foundational. Sustained focus is what makes it possible to read deeply, to think through complex problems, to learn difficult skills, to produce original work. Impulse control is what makes it possible to resist the immediate reward in service of the future goal. To hold to a financial strategy when the temptation to abandon it is real, both measurably degraded, by scrolling, not slightly. The review found effect sizes that researchers characterized as meaningful, and a separate study measuring brain electrical activity directly found specific changes in heavy social media users. People who spent more than 2 hours per day scrolling. Those users showed a 35% decrease in specific brainwave activity associated with the thinking part of the brain, the part responsible for rational decision-making, long-term planning, and the override of impulsive behavior. 35%. In people doing what hundreds of millions do every single day. The same study found partial recovery of these brain patterns after 30 days of abstinence, which tells us something important. This damage is not permanent. The brain can reorganize and recover, but recovery requires the very thing the platform is designed to prevent: stopping. Let's also be clear about what deteriorating sustained focus means in practice. The ability to sit with difficulty, to hold a complex thought in your mind long enough to work through it, to read something long without reaching for a faster stimulus, to tolerate the discomfort of a task that doesn't immediately reward you. These are not small things. They are the mental prerequisites for almost every high-value activity a person can engage in. Learning a skill deeply enough to be paid well for it, starting and sustaining a business, understanding your finances thoroughly enough to manage them intelligently, building a relationship that requires patience and nuance, making health decisions that require weighing long-term consequences against short-term comfort. All of these require sustained focus. All of them are made harder by a brain that has been trained by an environment of 2-second videos and infinite novel stimulation to treat anything that doesn't immediately reward it as something to swipe past. And the brain trained this way doesn't just struggle with long tasks when it's on the phone. It carries that recalibrated expectation of stimulation into the rest of its life. The book that used to be absorbing now feels slow. The conversation that requires patience now feels draining. The work that used to feel engaging now feels tedious before it begins. Not because the book, or the conversation, or the work has changed. Because your brain's baseline has been raised to a level ordinary life cannot consistently meet. A 2025 study from Nanyang Technological University found that constant social media use trains the brain to crave novelty, making it harder to sustain deep focus or even rest. Note that word. Rest. Not just focus. Rest. The ability to be still, to be bored, to be in a quiet moment without reaching for stimulation. This is also being eroded, and the ability to rest is not separable from the ability to think well. The brain processes information and locks in learning not during stimulation, but during quiet. It solves problems in the background while you're doing nothing. It generates creative ideas during moments of restful stillness. When you can no longer tolerate stillness, you lose access to that, and no amount of active effort can replace it. This is the counterintuitive twist in all of this. The very state the platforms make hardest to access is the state most associated with the outcomes people are using social media to pursue: financial freedom, meaningful work, strong relationships, physical health, creative achievement. None of these come from a highly stimulated, novelty-seeking, comparison-driven, algorithmically managed mind. All of them come from the opposite, from depth, from patience, from the willingness to be deeply engaged with one hard thing for long enough that it begins to compound. The trap is almost elegant in its cruelty. It promises a window onto the lives of people who have achieved what you want. It delivers an experience that makes it progressively harder for you to do the things that would get you there. And it does this while keeping you convinced that the problem is something else entirely. Your circumstances, your starting point, your bad luck, your lack of the right information, which surely the next video will provide. Now here's the part that most conversations about social media never reach. Because everything we've just covered, the reward trap, the echo chamber, the learned helplessness, the attention erosion, the comparison spiral, was not invented by social media. Social media discovered and industrialized something that ancient wisdom traditions had already identified. The problem of the untrained, stimulus-seeking, outwardly scattered mind is not new. Every tradition that cared about the quality of human life identified it. Stoics, Buddhists, Confucians, Islamic scholars, Christian mystics, traditions that had no contact with each other, separated by centuries and continents, all arrived at the same observation independently. The mind that cannot focus on one thing cannot build anything meaningful from within itself, and the life that flows from such a mind tends to be reactive rather than chosen, scattered rather than directed, full of activity and empty of progress. They didn't have brain scans, but they had millennia of observation, and what they saw was what we are now measuring with brain scans. The scattered mind is not free, it is trapped in the immediate, the reactive, the surface level, the comparison with others. The disciplined mind, and the one that can hold its attention on a single thing, tolerate difficulty, resist novelty long enough to go deep, that mind is the one that actually builds things. That mind is the one that generates the outcomes the scrolling mind watches enviously from behind a screen. So what does this mean for you, practically, right now? Because if this video is doing its job, you're feeling something uncomfortable. A recognition. The specific feeling of understanding that something you've been treating as harmless entertainment has been working against you more systematically than you knew. And the question that follows recognition is always the same. Now what? Here's where it gets genuinely useful. Because the research doesn't just describe the problem, it points towards specific, concrete things you can do. Starting today, let's go through them. The first and most important intervention: reintroducing decision points. Because the platform removes them, you have to manually build them back. Use timers. Remove apps from your phone's home screen so that accessing them requires a deliberate action. Set specific bounded times for social media use rather than leaving the feed accessible continuously throughout your day. A 2025 study on infinite scrolling found that the most effective interventions work by restoring exactly this: the moment of pause. The moment where the thinking part of your brain gets a chance to ask whether you actually want to keep going. Without that moment, you are scrolling by default. With it, you are making a choice. That distinction is everything. The goal is to turn passive, default behavior into active, deliberate behavior. Not to eliminate the platforms entirely, but to remove the condition of continuous, frictionless access that makes them most damaging. That one change alone matters more than you think. The second intervention the research supports: deliberate boredom, structured periods of genuine stillness, not necessarily meditation, though that also has strong evidence behind it. Simply time with no stimulus, a walk without your phone, a meal without a screen, a commute spent watching the world rather than a feed. These periods of low stimulation are when your brain's reward system begins to recalibrate toward natural levels. When you allow boredom, something specific happens after the initial discomfort. The world starts to become more interesting again. Not the algorithmically curated world, the actual world, the one that requires your real, present attention. Books start to feel absorbing again. Conversations start to feel genuinely interesting again. Your own thoughts start to generate ideas and connections that the constant external stimulation was drowning out. This recalibration takes time. Research suggests meaningful changes begin to emerge within weeks of significantly reduced usage. But the process can only begin when you stop refilling the cup. The third intervention: deliberate diversification of your information environment. Because the echo chamber is built by an algorithm optimizing for engagement, breaking it requires active effort to introduce sources and perspectives outside your existing pattern. Not to subject yourself to content that distresses you, but to specifically and regularly encounter ideas, information, and viewpoints that are genuinely different from what the algorithm has been choosing for you. Read something long. Read something you disagree with, charitably. Seek out people whose financial or professional lives look different from yours and pay attention to how they think rather than just what they have. The goal is to break the mirror, to introduce genuine novelty, the kind that produces growth. Not the superficial novelty of the infinite feed that produces only more of the same stimulation in a slightly different package. Real novelty, the kind that changes how you see things, That's the kind that compounds. The fourth intervention has the most direct financial application. Rebuilding your relationship with delayed reward. Deliberately engaging in activities that require sustained effort and produce their rewards only slowly. Exercise. Learning a skill. Building something. Reading deeply. Saving toward a goal. These activities, done consistently over time, are not just productive in themselves. They are brain rehabilitation. They retrain your reward system toward the long-term reward profile that financial progress requires. Every time you do the thing that's hard and unrewarding in the moment but meaningful in the future, you are rebuilding the exact biological capacity that the platform has been eroding. You are making real-world effort feel rewarding again. You are reestablishing the link between patience and outcome that learned helplessness severed. Every single repetition matters. Every single time you choose the slow, meaningful thing over the fast, hollow one, you are winning ground back. The fifth intervention is probably the most important and the most overlooked. It is changing the question you're asking about your phone. Most people ask, how do I use my phone less? That question puts all the weight on willpower, against a system designed to defeat willpower. The more productive question is this: what am I using this for, specifically, and does that use actually serve what I want my life to look like? That question changes everything, because not all phone use is equivalent, not all content is equivalent, not all platforms run the same system toward the same ends. There is a real difference between using a device to learn something specific, to connect meaningfully with specific people, to create something, to organize your financial life, and using it to scroll an infinite feed of algorithmically selected stimulation with no beginning and no end and no purpose beyond the next hit of novelty. The device in your hand is not your enemy. The algorithm running certain applications on it is not serving your interests. Separating those two facts and acting on the distinction is the beginning of reclaiming something the trap has been quietly taking from you. That's the move. That's the shift that makes every other step possible. Your brain was built for something remarkable. It was built to learn, to create, to plan, to build, to connect deeply, to solve hard problems, to grow through difficulty and emerge from it more capable than before. These are not aspirational ideas. They are biological facts about the machinery you were born with, the same machinery that an industry of extraordinary sophistication has spent the last decade learning to redirect. Not toward your goals, toward their metrics. You picked up your phone to check one thing, and somewhere in the machinery of that habit, in the reward loop, in the echo chamber, in the learned helplessness, in the eroded attention, in the comparison spiral, something important has been quietly draining away. Not your potential, not your capability, just your access to them. Just the daily, compounding hours of a depleted and distracted mind that can see the life it wants, somewhere in the feed, but can't quite hold its attention on the path that actually leads there. The path is still there. It has always been there. It requires a kind of attention that used to come naturally and now has to be reclaimed deliberately. It requires the tolerance for slowness and difficulty and boredom that every meaningful thing demands. It requires the willingness to stop scrolling long enough to start building. The ancient traditions were right about what the scattered mind costs. The modern research is right about what's scattering it. Now you know both. What you do next is yours. Have you ever put your phone down for a day, genuinely on purpose, and noticed what happened to your thinking? I want to know. Drop it in the comments below. Because I read them. And honestly, your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video genuinely changed the way you see your phone, hit the like button. It helps more people find it who actually need it. And subscribe if you want more honest, research-backed videos about how to genuinely build a better financial and mental life. No fluff, just the real picture. You weren't born for the feed, you were born for the thing you'd be building if you weren't in it. Put the phone down, open the notebook. The path is right there, and it has been waiting for you the whole time.